My name is Tawfiq Hable, and I will be your host for this event. Please, the one who's using AI for recording, please stop that. This is not allowed. We are recording this session. So please keep your microphones muted during the session. Use your full name so we can identify you for PDUs. Feel free to turn on your video if you like. Use the chat to ask questions, share comments, or drop your LinkedIn for networking. You are welcome to reach out to the speaker directly with follow-up questions. As I mentioned, this session will be recorded. However, any additional recording or transcription by participants or AI bots is strictly prohibited. So please stop that. Thank you for your cooperation. So today we will be discussing risks. I love risks by Arturas Kuliesas from Lithuania, right?
That's correct. Guten Abend. Wie geht es Ihnen?
All right. So,
Okay.
as I mentioned, this was done. Let's talk about PMI Germany chapter and especially Darmstadt local group. So PMI Germany chapter is a result of visionary efforts to unify project management professionals across the country. While the idea of increased collaboration between chapters started as early as 2014, and then in 2020, the official PMI Germany chapter was established through the merger of three existing chapters: PMI Southern Germany, PMI Frankfurt, and PMI Berlin. Our main target: empowering leaders, facilitating learning, fostering network opportunities, and so on. Darmstadt local group is out of 5 volunteers. Florian is from France. He's located in Germany. Also, Maria, who's the team lead. Currently, she's in Poland. Mohamed Razai is from Ravenshan. He's also in Germany. And Thomas Valenta, he's also in Germany. I'm Tawfiq Hable. I'm joining you from Beirut. We are having we are having 2 events online and 1 face-to-face roundtable per month. Our LinkedIn group have more than 400 members, so we encourage you to join us and be one of our followers on social media. Arturas, would you like to start? The floor is yours.
Hello. Once again, it's a pleasure to be talking to you guys. I'm Arturas Kuliesas. I'm working at Litgrid as a transmission system operator in Lithuania, and I have quite some experience with projects and programs since 2002. Mostly I've been working in the field of finance and IT, and since 2019 I have been working in energy. And I will start with a few slides, if that's okay.
Yes, of course. I will stop sharing from my side.
Okay, and I will start sharing on my side then. And here we are. Okay, so this is the latest of what our achievements have been, and I have some good news to share that our program that we started in 2019 has achieved a significant landmark of connecting Baltic states to the continental European grid, which Germany is a proud part of. And this has been a monumental achievement, as Lithuania has no large history of mega projects, and this has been one of those. And I will be talking quite a lot about mega projects because I happen to see them from up close. And I will start with a question. Are you happy with the project risk management as you have it in the organization? Sorry. Okay, may I continue? Okay, so and this is not an empty question because we happen to have a lot of challenges in organizations when it comes to discussing project risk management and risk management in general. And the more demanding organization is to have successful risk management, the less happy it is about how it's done. Like Hubbard has even written a book that I certainly recommend you to read it. It states that most risk management methodologies in use today are little better than astrology. Using these methodologies ironically imposes a risk, even though they are supposedly designed to reduce it. And the risk is that they are not doing anything at all, or are luring decision makers into a false sense of security while exposing companies to the potential of devastating losses. Do we have to be worried about that? And as it appears, yes, we have. If we look into history of large projects that we have, even in the latest history of mega projects, High Speed 2 in UK, California High Speed Rail, two projects that have been mentioned in the book by Professor Fluberg and then Gardner, How Big Things Get Done. I'm certainly recommending it for reading. Or USS Gerald Ford, the aircraft carrier. They all show that the bigger project is, the more likely it's to run into delays or overruns. And sometimes those delays and overruns can be extremely heavy. In general, success rate for large projects or mega projects is so low that it's very unlikely that a new project that you will start will ever meet the budget and the schedule and the benefits as you plan. So essentially, starting a big project, talking lightly, is setting it for failure. And the thing is that the bigger projects come with big risks. It's an apparent paradox, but it's quite easy to explain. Mega projects are more prone to major delays and overruns because they are susceptible to much wider spectrum of risks. And many of them reinforce each other due to deep complexity and dependencies within those projects, or dependencies on projects outside of the portfolio or of the same project. In addition, large projects can be difficult to adapt or change course when needed. They're slightly like a Titanic. You can't steer it away from an iceberg. In comparison, smaller projects have fewer dependencies and have more options to solve issues when they arise. They are also simply shorter, which means that there's less space for high impact, low likelihood risks to materialize. So a comparison between small and large projects is, of course, very well in favor of small projects. But what's also important is that complexity of mega projects dictates that a large percentage of the damage is due to black swans, risks neither identified nor mitigated against when planning the project. And my program is hardly an exception. And what I would like to point out is that we have a huge number of active entries. Right now, we are shutting down the program, so these numbers are getting smaller. But a few months ago, that was absolutely true, that we had 250 entries active at all times in the risk register. The most risk-conscious program that we had in the country, we had lost so many risks, and with every major supply chain issue that happened in the world, we had certain exposure. So COVID-19, Never Given accident in the Suez Canal, the war in Ukraine, sanctions related to delivery of equipment, costs of metals, costs of plastics that were hiked in 2022 and 2023, Houthi militant activity in the Red Sea, which causes all the significant traffic in the coming from China to Europe, go around Africa, which delays delivery by weeks and months. And all of that happened to us. So we had a very clear chance to see that even for organizations that have very advanced and mature risk management, we don't necessarily have strong tools to prevent the risks from happening or even significantly impact the damage. And partially is because we are doing a lot of things, let's say, by the book. So, it really started me thinking that we are looking into risk management, and when we read these books, we don't mention why we have risk management, what we need from risk management in the first place. And I put together a few major criteria, what I need from risk management as a project manager. So for me, risk management needs to be effective. So it should reduce the overall risk or enhance the overall opportunity as compared to doing nothing. So if doing nothing is just as good, there's no point in doing something. It must be efficient and that means that have better balance of costs and benefits rather than doing nothing. So it doesn't have only to be effective. That is, it doesn't have only to create a benefit of smaller risk. It should come at the right price. So when you manage risks, they have their own price and you have to pay it, whether risk happens or not. And it must be transparent and give accurate picture of overall risk profile to all concerned stakeholders. So one reason we have risk management is not necessarily that because we want to mitigate, but because we want our decision makers to be very, very well aware of the risk of this undertaking. So your investment should clearly show how risky it is so that they can make proper business decisions. These principles equally apply to threats and opportunities. So if I ask ChatGPT to help me with a question, what do you need to improve project risk management in 5 bullet points? The ChatGPT will always help. And it's kind of predictable what the answers are. We should identify risks early, prioritize and assess risks. Basically, what we need to do normally, based on a qualitative risk management, develop mitigation strategies. Then we have monitor and communicate regularly. And the fifth one actually surprised me is that we have to foster a risk-aware culture. But generally, for 4 first things, it's essentially what you should do by the book. So, which is hardly a surprise. ChatGPT is not creating anything completely new. It's basing the answers on what's available. But is it really helpful to you in the end? So, what we know, and when you ask project managers about these things that ChatGPT suggests that we do, and we identify risks early. But then we find that there is a lot, even if we do that, there's a lot of dead weight in the register. Risks, we have risks that are trivial and already mitigated by the plan. Risks that are already catastrophic, and if we realize they would make this project the last of priorities, it will just decimate the business case for the project itself. So even thinking about them is considered waste of time. Risks in the low likelihood, high impact corner or black swan corner that we will probably never start to mitigate because we will never reach a sufficient capability to address them. So-called risks that are already active issues. And that's a dead weight because you can't do anything very proactive with that. The risks that were realized in the end were not the ones that we wrote into risk register. The more risks we identify, the more effort we have to spend on not on mitigating, but on administrating them. So as a matter of fact, we find that for many risks in even large projects, we end up with imitation of work, which basically means that we are implicitly accepting what's happening, and any mitigation actions in the risk register are hardly increasing chance that the risk will not materialize or the damage will be smaller. And when we come to prioritizing the risks, there are more low likelihood, high impact risks that we will ever be able to manage. So black swan corner, so to speak. What do we do with them? Likelihood score, which is supposedly important and it has to be used in qualitative risk assessment, is very difficult actually to assess in any remote level of precision, because quite often we are talking about risks that have never materialized in this project or have never materialized in this organization, and in any way these are quite contextual. So when we talk about mitigation strategies, we find that if we will never be able to allocate enough resources to mitigate the risks that we think that are priority risks. So in essence, we don't have good response plans that would make significant impact on many of the risks that we identify. On the other hand, if we identify few risks, we might miss very important ones. So traditional risk management, if you read PMBOK, if you read books on risk management, they will explain your failure to address risks effectively by a failure of identification. You just don't identify sufficient number of risks. Your problem is that you don't have large enough risk registers, so make it larger. Put more risks into the risk registers, work more, engage AI if you want to. But you need to do all you can to capture all the risks that you could possibly have. In assessment, they would recommend you to be more conservative, so you don't filter out too many risks. So you pick up the black swan corner, you pick up the corner of small impact, large likelihood, and maybe some of the green risks as well. So and in addition, your recommendations from books would to drop in quantitative assessment in addition to qualitative assessment, which essentially says that you need to get data that would allow you to estimate properly the risk level. And the fact is, to get that data, you will spend a lot of effort that you don't have, you cannot afford to spend. And we are in the interesting position. We are talking about AI, and we are saying that AI will help us with it. But in fact, we don't know how to tell AI to do that work. And in response planning, we are commanded to proactively mitigate all the risks that we find, try to eliminate as much as possible. Prevention is more important than damage control. So avoid risks, make sure that we avoid these risks from happening. That all the approaches advocate for more effort, investment, and innovation to be put into risk management. And that's so different from what I see in actual practical life of project manager. A case study that I can tell from actual organization, from actual risk register in the organization. The official risk register in a software system that we have has 17 fields in describing a single risk. 13 fields out of those 17 are mandatory to fill. We have to introduce things like KRIs, or key risk indicators. We have each KRI has at least 7 mandatory fields to fill. For each risk response actions, we have 4 mandatory fields, and of course, one risk response action is not enough. So you have to do a lot of work just to put in a single risk description, which I estimated was around 30 minutes by trying to do that. And the project managers, like myself, found the system extremely difficult to operate and not producing any benefit except for illusion of work. So they started avoiding it. When your project managers avoid a risk register, what happens? It stops not only being difficult, it becomes useless and dangerous because it gives stakeholders a false sense of security that you're on top of it. And that's where I've started spending more time on finding alternatives to it. And this was to build more value in uncertainty management with fewer rituals, less effort, and less cost than by using what we now call scenario-based risk management. So scenario-based risk management is the one where you have to identify risks in scenarios, assess risk scenarios, then attach mitigation actions to risk scenarios, and then implement those mitigation actions. And this, from what I know very much, is only a very small part of the picture and a small part of the toolkit that you should have at your disposal as project managers. But suddenly we find that organizations just don't know about that other part of the toolkit because it's outside of the scope of many trainings and information that's available to project managers. So I'm trying to do something that will allow you to take a new look at uncertainty and risk. And when we talk about uncertainty and risk, people usually confuse one with another. So I have to start from the very beginning. So what is uncertainty in a nutshell? We can structure uncertainty in a simple form from Donald Rumsfeld. Known unknowns are uncertain events that we can predict but can articulate. So we can't predict if it's raining tomorrow, but we can articulate what we know what rain is. So rain tomorrow is known unknown. And known knowns are established facts, things that actually happen. There is no probability or likelihood attached to that. That's things that we are fully sure of, and we do not consider them even a part of uncertainty. Then we have unknown unknowns. These are events that we can neither predict nor articulate, and they are good basis for black swans. A lot of organizations, I've asked actually at one point, many organizations on the web, I asked how many of the project managers who had a project that crossed into 2020 had on last day of 2018 a risk register entry having a word pandemic or epidemic in it. And I have a very comprehensive answer completed from 600 responses, that it's 78% of project managers said they didn't have that mentioned at all. So that means that it was something outside of the scope of many considerations. So in a way, for them, it was a black swan, although there were, of course, people outside of those organizations, deep thinkers, science fiction writers, who can talk about massive outbreaks. But for them, it was something that we're completely unready for. And finally, there are unknown nodes, and it's a tricky point because most people just forget about it. Unknown nodes is hidden tacit knowledge that we successfully apply without thinking. Things like driving. We don't think when we drive. We don't think when what to do when we wake up in the morning. We don't. Our brain, the second system of the brain, is not working yet, but we already do something, and doing things without thinking sometimes is quite successful. And these things that we don't articulate, we are not able to put any thinking into, but we apply them. These are unknown knowns, and we are actually able to exploit that. I will show you later. So let's talk about plans for a bit. So we have plans. We are project managers. We have plans for everything. We have plans even to make our morning coffee. So let's talk about plans for a bit. So our plans are made from two things: facts and assumptions. And facts are things that are known knowns, and assumptions are things that those don't fall into known knowns. So it's our known unknowns, which we have no accurate answers to questions for. We ask, and we have unknown knowns where we neglect or are unable to ask the right questions at all. So assumptions have inherent uncertainty or a potential to be confirmed or disproved. So we have lots of assumptions about everything when we plan something. We just don't think, in many cases, that we are actually making an assumption. For every plan, a big part of what we put into the plan are assumptions, things that we believe will happen, but we don't know for sure. And uncertainty basically means that if you have an initial plan, as you go with the implementation, as you go verifying assumptions, in the end, you will find that assumptions are confirmed. That means the plan is adequate, that it will produce the results that you expected. But if your assumptions, as you proceed in your plan, are disproved, the project will produce something completely different and vary from initial expectations. This is a very important thing. So as you grow with your project, when you acquire knowledge, your uncertainty is decreased and your knowledge is increased. And if your assumptions are proven rather than disproven in that process, that means your plan was good from the very beginning. So now I want to bring in risk management. So what about risk management? So the risk management is the most common way to handle uncertainty in projects, and it's what we learn in our courses. Basically, the principle is like this: we have a very clear big uncertainty. It's vague. It's difficult to quantify. It's difficult to articulate. So we try to simplify it, reduce complexity. Our way to reduce complexity of big uncertainty is to break it down into risks. Risk plural, or risk events, things that might happen with certain, but we can articulate, we can talk about them, we can imagine them, we can write about them, we can explain how they will impact your project. And we break it down into small pieces. The smaller the pieces, the bigger the risk register is. So they come each with its own likelihood and its own impact on your project outcomes. And it is assumed that we, as professional project managers or risk managers, can attribute likelihood and impact to risks. So we can do assessment of those risks. And we have to be very clear about one thing. Uncertainty is a real thing. It's like the Earth. And the risks or risk management based on scenarios is just one model of uncertainty. It's like a globe. It will not give you full understanding of what the Earth is. It can simplify the world view for you. So if you want, you can make it more detailed, but it will have to grow. And if you want all the details in the world, you will have to have a globe that's the size of the Earth. The problem is it's rather useless. You want things to be useful or effective. So while uncertainty is an indispensable element of project reality, risks are just a conceived complexity reducing model that creates a discrete representation of uncertainties, of something that's real in the way that we understand. And scenario-based risk management is a well-tested method of coping with uncertainty, but it has its limitations. I've talked about those, and it has to be kept practical or pragmatic, if you might. So, pragmatic risk and uncertainty management is something of a framework. And I come up with an traveling and proselytizing a bit for a bit. So basically, it depends. Its objective is to make risk and uncertainty management effective, efficient, and transparent at the same time. And that is, first of all, we should understand that scenario-based risk management, things that we understand as qualitative risk management, is a very small part of the picture. So risk identification process is costly, time-consuming, and that does not guarantee effectiveness. And risk response planning is also costly and is spread too thin against available resources and available risks. So in the end, you have a system where you have a vicious cycle where if you have, after assessment, if you have small number of risks, you will probably miss out on important risks, but you can afford focus. And if you have a huge risk register because you spend a lot of time putting more detail into your risk picture, you will have more risk scenarios in your risk register, but you will never have resources available to you to cover all the resources, all the risks that you put in, because even now we are effectively able to mitigate less than half and usually less than 25% of risks that we have in risk management registers. Give you an example. Scenario-based risk management is, in the way, analogy of feeding a person lots of pills against all possible illness he or she might catch in the future. It depends how many pills you have, but you are giving them those pills to them in advance. So you don't know if they will be useful, but you have to buy those pills, you have to feed those pills, and you have to take a risk of side effects. The more pills you use, the more you covered, but the more is impact of those side effects, and the more it costs to you to actually follow that through. So the question is, where we stop talking about following the ritual and we start talking about effectiveness and efficiency, is this enough? My approach was to avoid following scenario-based risk management activities that do not contribute to effectiveness and transparency or are inefficient. Instead, adopt what I call a wide stroke approach, where you have a possibility that your risk response will cover many risks at the same time that you not necessarily even don't have to describe, so that you design the project in such a way that you don't need to go through a scenario-based approach, which is difficult, complex, and time-consuming. And methods to do that are four: managing assumptions and maturity of the project, strengthening resilience of the project, support what works with process control, and fail fast and cheap with modeling and simulation. All these four models We still have time for that, so I will just cover them in a second. So if we look into a map of the uncertainty, so we have scenario-based risk management in the top left corner. That's what we are used to. This is what we think that we usually apply for uncertainty. But we have lots of other things. We have, for unknown unknowns, scenario-based risk management doesn't work because unknown unknowns are by definition not articulated, and we can't work with risk management on things that we can't articulate. So, but you can use project resilience management, modeling, simulation, and prototyping. Also, for known unknowns, we can use assumption and maturity management because it will help you to simplify the process of working with things that you haven't thought enough. And process control that helps you to stabilize things that might go wrong if you allow them to go in any way they can possibly go. So, and this is how I manage uncertainty in the program. We have plans for each of these parts so that we are able to use those tools and achieve better result and focus on value. So this is the reason why we are doing it. We want to get better results by using the right tools with less effort, less cost, and less complexity. So the first is maturity and assumption management. You can take a look at the barrels of wine. When you talk about maturity, I actually make wine, so it's kind of sentimental to me. You are also making wine over there in Darmstadt?
You
At
have
least
to
some
ask
of you.
to Thomas.
We are drinking it.
Okay, good. That, at least I have an export market. All right. So once back to a quote from Fleabag and Gardner: "How big things get done, projects don't go wrong; they start wrong." And there's a lot of truth in that. Projects set for failure are easy to recognize. They are trying to progress faster than they mature. As I mentioned before, we have projects made of facts and assumptions. And if you have more facts, you have high maturity. Or if you have fewer facts and more assumptions, you have low maturity. You will always start with zero facts and lots of assumptions. And as you progress through the project life cycle, you will bring in more and more facts, which will increase your maturity. So maturity of the project is share of the validated assumptions, which are becoming facts, in its technical approach versus initial assumptions. So when I say we are overrunning maturity, what do I mean? Technical feasibility not proven by the time procurement starts, for example. We don't know if it's possible to do, but we are already pushing with procurement because we promised that to our key stakeholder. We haven't done the study that we need to do. We think that we will figure out things later on. We're postponing figuring things out because we need to push the project. Land rights are not secured before construction, or the delivery date set without a working prototype. By the way, if you look at the best stories in overrunning maturity, you can have Theranos, which essentially tried to sell a product that they haven't yet created. So we need to be very careful that we progress with maturity well on time. So, and it's important because with the cost escalation rule that's maybe 50 years old, 45 years old. So the further in your software development life cycle you make an error, the more expensive it is to fix it. The same goes for the projects. If you disprove an assumption too late in the project life cycle, it will become more and more expensive for you to fix it. So your understanding is to avoid getting immature, into late stage of the project. So the point which I raise here is to start with document your assumptions. You have to keep your assumptions register up to date by adding, detailing, and refining assumptions. You have to validate your assumptions as a normal project activity without delay. And you have to measure and monitor maturity of the project. This, I haven't mentioned a risk, but everybody knows that disproved a risk always exists with every assumption, that it will be disproven and it will cost you something. But you don't spend time assessing what it will cost you, because it doesn't make sense. It's probably guesswork anyway. But what you can do, you can focus on the fact whether you are actually increasing maturity or are you at a low maturity. And this is something that you can measure. So you do what you can, and it can get you a better result. So as an example, I had a project part where we had a Russian sanctions problem to get the cargo from port in Klaipėda to substation, but it's really off-size cargo, and you can't get it to by road. You only need a rail car, which is a special one, and only three countries in the world have these types of railway car: Russia, Ukraine, and Finland. And Finland has only one. Russia maybe has a number, but we can't use them because it's a war, and so we have sanctions. So in the end, we ended up going with a Ukrainian one, and it's a very long and interesting story. It's worth a thriller, but we will get back to that later. What I need to say that when we work on a project, we have to document what, if we plan to do something, what assumptions we put into this. And this is easier than to document risk events. If you try, you will see that. And the thing is, when you progress with your project, at some point, you will achieve end of phase, and beginning of another phase, at which point you will have to make a financial commitment about your investment. In the beginning, the point is to move to high maturity as fast as possible before you start making heavy financial commitments to avoid damage to your project, which is why we have studies, which is why we have designs, which is why we have expert evaluations, and we have tests, and prototypes. So these things can be measured, and these things can be assessed before you pass that critical point. And we need to reach a maturity level that you agree with, let's say 80% or 90%, before you start your massive investment. And this is where we can actually make sure that we are able to see where we are at any point when we move to the critical point. If you are below the target curve of maturity, that means that you will probably, most likely, not make it at the same money to the critical point. So it will we will have to spend more money to reach a sufficient maturity, or you will have to make a commitment with not reaching sufficient maturity. In both of these issues are potentially problematic, but you have to make a decision, and you might need maybe additional money for studies, or you might want to take a bigger risk. You will have a possibility to make that decision, but reaching sufficient maturity is very important. If you are too slow on reaching maturity, it makes this big part a huge risk for you. And this is what we are discussing without any discussions of risk scenarios. We are talking just about maturity, and it's easy to explain. Similarly, it is a time maturity diagram. As we had investment maturity diagram, we have time maturity diagram, that if you have a go, no go point scheduled somewhere in time, if you're following, if your curve is below or above, you can make a decision whether you will be reaching the critical point, the point of go, no go, before or after the time that's planned. And you can make a decision whether you want to add more time to reach sufficient maturity, or you want to take a risk, take a gamble, and go at low maturity into the next phase where you have bigger risks, not only to investment, but also to the time of the project. So these are things that you can do without discussing individual risks of what might go wrong, because this is a very difficult question. What might go wrong and how likely is it going to be? Another tool in the toolkit, which is often overlooked, is resilience management, which is a very powerful tool to prepare for unforeseen. And project resilience is not about if and not about how likely, it's about what's next. So you will focus not on the things that might not happen. You will assume that bad things will happen. The important thing is for you to determine for your project what are critical success factors that you need to meet. You have to identify crucial assets and capabilities, such as infrastructure, resources, suppliers, designs, technologies that you will need to successfully reach the project on time and on budget. If you identify your critical success factors, you have to make a mind experiment telling you, assuming that you lose those critical success factors. They're gone, one by one. If I needed a data center, I'm assuming I don't have a data center anymore. I'm not asking how likely is it going to be. I'm asking what will happen if that happens. Resilience does not concern itself with the question how likely it's going to be. So then we are discussing strategies of what can actually be done about critical success factors that are damaged or degraded. Redundancy, having two or more identical critical success factors. There is a good reason why airliners have two engines and two wings. So we not necessarily have to go into details of what can happen if you have only one engine, but to know significantly that, and from very good practice, that if you have two of them, probability of fatal accident is going down significantly. Substitution, having a different critical success factor that enables an equivalent or almost equivalent results. Do you know why it's good to replace with something that's different? Because your initial success factor might have a design flaw, and redundancy doesn't help against design flaw. If you have two faulty engines, they are both faulty if it is a design flaw exists. So substitution allows you to go into things that are not dependent on a single factor, like design of the critical success factor. Commoditization, using only widely available critical success factors when possible, instead of using proprietary technology, instead of using one supplier for everything, instead of using expensive and difficult to get or unique things. Look if they can do it on commodity-based solutions, on things that you can easily replenish when you need. And the fourth is elimination, reducing the number or variety of critical success factors used in a project. It's also a possible strategy. Maybe, just maybe, what you thought is a critical success factor, if you redesign your project, you will not need it. So this approach, when we take 4 steps, identify CSFs, assume the loss, develop response strategy, and enable warning triggers, will allow you to determine a strategy or resilience plan that will not ask any questions about risk events and risk scenarios. So why does it work? There are much fewer, significantly fewer critical success factors in your projects than there are possible risk scenarios. So you simply listing them would be faster, much more productive, and you will get better results than trying to predict the complexity of what might go wrong in the future. So, and another thing is response strategies and critical success factors have this wide stroke properties. That means that they are, once you have a response action, it can be effective against very wide set of risk scenarios. That means that you actually cheated the entire system of risk management by implementing a risk response that covers a lot of risk scenarios. Isn't that beautiful? I think it is. On the right part of the screen, you can see my suggested cheat sheet of critical success factors. But of course, each project and each organization will have to expand that list, make it more context-oriented for that organization, for that project. Also, there are heuristics, things that are absolutely helpful in addition to what we have in critical success factor analysis. These are also helping. It's about building a proper resilient project architecture. So one thing is to manage resource reserves, grow and consolidate contingency reserve. We talk a lot about utilizing contingency reserve, but we don't talk about things that during the project implementation, we should always build up contingency reserve. We should always look for ways to consolidate more contingency reserve rather than use it. Don't try to fit the schedule. Try to compress the schedule at any time and see what additional time you win. The same goes for budget. So avoid slack by booking resources flexibly. Control dependencies. There are many dependencies, especially in programs like ours. Projects are intertwined. They are interdependent on what each of those projects are doing. So disentangle those dependencies. Look for ways how to avoid impact of one part of the project to another part of the project. Why? Because if dependencies are there, if you have delay on one part of your project, you will have actually delay on two parts of the project, or maybe three. So the more dependencies you have, the more it is likely that your project will go out massively off the schedule. So one of the continuous practice that we are doing is dependency management, trying to monitor dependencies and, if it's possible, to disentangle them. And contingency planning, ability to have plan B for key stages of the project. Especially, it's important in the initial stage when you do initial design and you have low maturity. If you have a low maturity, that means that there is a very good chance, more than 50%, that the design that you have right now will be disproven or will have to go through amendments going forward. So you can have multiple designs, multiple technical approaches being developed in parallel until you reach sufficient maturity with one of them. And you are confident that you can sacrifice work on other designs because you can already see that your design is approaching sufficient maturity. And streamline decision making. A lot of losses in the projects are incurred because of faulty decision making. So it takes a lot of time to make decisions, especially when, for example, if you put into your schedule things like adapting to a board schedule. You have a major project. That's what was funny. Somebody told me in legal department that I should adapt my schedule to the board schedule of board meetings that are only once in months. So it's possible that I will have to spend 3 weeks waiting for a board meeting to make a decision. If that's really an important project, if it's transformative for you, you can get the board meeting on time when you need it. Actually, you just need to ask. And that's a lesson I learned. Being a project manager gives you an opportunity to make things faster if you just need to move. If you just move and ask. And institute provisional decisions that can be cancelled afterwards, and delegate decision-making to the lowest possible level of authority so that board meeting schedule is not a fact in the end. Process control is where we talk about tacit knowledge or unknown knowns. This is where a technique that says essentially, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There are lots of things that we do and continue doing that work. So one of the things that project managers should ensure is that things that are being done and they are effective, they are not variating from the process. So because unsanctioned variability in well-established processes is actually a cause of many defects, many delays and issues in projects. So the risk can be reduced by instituting processes that are difficult to stray from. So as an example, just a few years ago, a major trader has lost 440 billion in 45 minutes because there was unsanctioned changes to trading software. There are lots of examples when not doing something right or just straying from the process that is established and safe can create issues in place. What you can do is to make sure that you follow the right process and you have, as a project manager, authority to make sure that things are done in the right way. Automation and integration can always help with that, but in many cases, there are other strategies to avoid doing things in innovative way when it's not necessary. It's in many cases, we will find that there are safe and capable ways of doing things the old way, which are quite sufficient. And like Windows XP was working, and people were reluctant to go on Windows Vista because Windows XP essentially did the same thing, and they didn't want added bonus of risk that the system will crash. So as a project manager, you should always consider that things that work and the processes that are established and standardized in the organization, they are stringently and are robustly maintained in your project, or you are running a risk that you will create issues for yourself. And one more thing is modeling, simulations, prototyping. As I've said, we have mostly big issues with our possibilities that when we design something, we will make a critical mistake, and that will create a risk, or we don't take into account the factor that might significantly impact the ability for you to finish the project or avoid defects in the final product. So prototyping, models, and simulations are really strong part at the moment. If you build something, develop something, create anything innovative, even building a house, there's a lots of areas where making prototypes, making models early in the project's phase, when your maturity is low, actually can help you achieve a reduction of risk going forward. I will give you an example. In construction, a big part of delays and overruns are driven by simple situation. We have drawings in design, and they're perfect, beautiful drawings. You can use them for construction. They are approved. The customer says, good, let's go with it. And then the constructor starts writing down a bill of material. The issue with human error writing down a bill of materials can propagate all the way to construction. And that would mean that sometime while on construction, somebody will notice that they've ordered the wrong part, or they didn't order enough of parts. And that will create out of nowhere 2 or 3 weeks of delays while they replenish the missing parts. And this is very, very frequent problem in construction, and it could be solved, for example, by using digital twins of building information models, where bill of material is built out of the model itself, and you don't have a person in the middle actually trying to interpret the drawings and put together a bill of materials. Similarly, in information technology, we have sprint demos. In engineering, we have 3D printing. We can make models actually for various situations that and various scenarios that we can use in your project to check various, not only mechanical, not only visual capabilities of the final product, but also things like thermal or chemical capabilities of final product. So we use a building information model in our construction. This is an example of what I'm doing. So these are additional factors that we can actually improve our risk management. We put together more tools into the toolkit of uncertainty management to help you to work with uncertainty. Of course, we can also refocus scenario-based risk management as well. We don't have to kill it altogether. But what I would suggest, a classic qualitative scenario-based risk response at this point, using a colorful matrix, which is called risk matrix or probability effect matrix, is usually prioritizing certain activities, certain mitigation, and we are asked to mitigate very significant or catastrophic risks. And we cannot accept them, but we are technically accepting them. Sorry, there is some noise. I don't know where it's come from. Hi, Thomas. Can you mute your screen? Thank you. Oh. Okay, I can move on. So, and the problem is, as I mentioned before, we have lots and lots of mitigation action because we are told that we have to mitigate everything that we find in risk register. My suggestion for the future, and it's possible something that we are doing, is to put, instead of 6 strategies for mitigation for a risk response, leave just 3: accept, investigate, mitigate. And investigate means we are not doing much about the action because we haven't found yet an applicable and worthy risk response action that would actually reduce probability of a risk or reduce the impact. And that's okay. The fewer mitigation points we have, the fewer actions we have, the more effort and focus we can actually dedicate to those items. And instead of trying to write down things and absolutely necessarily guarantee that for every risk in the risk register there will be mitigation actions, which is nonsense. It's never going to happen. Let's focus on those that we actually can see value, where we can identify things that we can do, and they will be not very costly, but productive, and they will not take away the resources that we need in developing the project. Let's focus on those. We will close them out, then we can move on to others. But it's very problematic when we have in current environment, when we have 200 risks and we need to mitigate 200. We never do that. In fact, it's just physically impossible to do. And that's it, what I wanted to cover. So what I wanted you to remember: uncertainty is an indispensable element of project reality. Risk management is a well-tested method of coping with uncertainty, but it does not work with all of it. So do not forget other tools of uncertainty management. The 3 pillars of pragmatic risk and uncertainty management are effectiveness, efficiency, and transparency. And wide use of toolkits available to you will allow you to capitalize on value creation, not destruction, in managing risk and uncertainty. So I hope you will use it, and I hope that you will tell me afterwards if you like that. Thank you very much, and I'm hoping to hear questions and comments.
Yeah, thanks, Arturas. I found that a very useful and very interesting webinar, or let's say Vortrag. I'm just missing the English word for that. Excerpt on risk management, and it's very pragmatic, and that's why I like it.
It's not academic, I tell you.
Thank you, Arturas. Thank you, Gunda. So let's take some questions. Do we have any question? I guess it was interesting, fruitful, and lots of information shared.
If I can have you, if you're interested in black swans, I have a webinar on projectmanagement.com, which you can all access. If you look for my name, you will find a webinar about the black swans, and also they are mentioning resilience as a way to counter black swans, rather than looking for extreme ways of predicting everything that cannot be predicted.
Gunda is cheating. She's writing that down. You are muted.
Yeah, I do indeed write that down.
All right, so let's move forward. Let's have some feedback. You can simply scan the QR code to give us your feedback. So we have 10 so far. It looks amazing, Arturas. I guess this is it. Really, once again, it was wonderful. We had pleasure listening to every part of your presentation. We hope that all of you will join us in our upcoming webinars for the few coming weeks. So maybe in the next coming week, we have an online webinar, a project in Japan by Maria. There's another one, it's not decided yet, by Taras, also from Ukraine. Maria from Chess. On 2 March, on the 2nd of March, how artificial intelligence will change how we manage projects, by Gloria from Germany. And then there's another one, AI for project management. So I really encourage you to attend these webinars, register and take part of that. Those are something good and you shouldn't miss. Once again, our group at Darmstadt, Florian Adrian, he's from France, but he's living in Darmstadt. Tufi, I'm from Beirut. Mohamed Razai, he's from Afghanistan and he's in Darmstadt. Maria from Macedonia, she's now based in Brussels. She's the group lead and she has a nice lady touch. She's with us here attending. Thomas, who's the godfather of Darmstadt local group.
Tufik,
Thomas.
we have two questions at least. So
Yes.
Xin Zhong raised her hand, so maybe Xin Gong. Just
yes.
start.
Thank you very much for the very useful and very informative presentation. And exactly, I have the question. I saw the upcoming event. The topics is for the AI, and the question is for the risk regarding the risk management. Yeah, are there some differences between the AI project and the normal traditional project?
AI project? Is that what, what I heard? I don't really know how to define an AI project. We can use various tools in project management. Populating a risk management. By the way, I actually did a request to populate a risk register to ChatGPT for a theoretical project. It's not really bad if you go in the traditional way. AI can help you with certain activities, and risk management, populating a risk register might be one of those. But be careful, it's not unless you teach the AI on your proprietary data, it will probably give you information that's devoid of context, and that means that it will most likely give you the default risks that apply not to your organization but to industry or global projects as in general. So we are waiting for a moment when organizations can afford to train the AI on proprietary data in their portfolio, and that's going to take a while.
Yes, that's exactly what will be discussed in the upcoming events. It's how you have to manage and how you have to deal with AI to manage your projects. That will be discussed in the upcoming events.
Yes, because it's currently there are two types. The AI use case is one is exactly using the AI technology into our project management. Yeah, the AI, the chatbot, is to integrate in the project management process, and the second is using the AI large language model, generative AI, into the project process, but it's not the management, the project management. That is why,
I think what's being done through AI now is like you ask for a general plan and then you will work it the way that will fit with your project. It's a little bit, as Arturas mentioned, that should be trained.
That will depend very much on how you train the model.
Your models.
And, but I can tell you at this point, I can see two most clear, the most likely applications of AI in project management for myself. I'm not telling for everybody. One is populating risk registers, and the second one is writing comprehensive reporting. Mm-hmm. And this is a problem because we found that the worst thing, if you have lots of stakeholders, the first thing you would want your PMO team doing is to write the reports for them. Mm-hmm. And you will have all the data, you have all the information, and writing reports based on the context, based on the language, based on the preferences of every stakeholder is crazy difficult. We have politicians, we have European Commission institutions, we have management board, we have parent companies, and everybody wants their reports in different format, although we have only the same data. So my dream is to employ AI to write them a human language report in such a way that they are happy.
That didn't work yet so far.
Okay.
And I haven't yet succeeded in that, but that's I think there is a potential in this.
Yeah.
Stephanie,
Thank you very much.
Stephanie Meyer had another question, Arturas. So the question was how to move the stakeholders to this pragmatic way, which wanted only the traditional management, the risk management.
That's a great question. I didn't succeed to cover that topic because it would take a few hours more. But the first thing I think we need to create is to enable them to understand that uncertainty is much more than the risk models, and that creates additional problem because project risk management is only a subset of what we know as enterprise risk management. And enterprise risk management is much more conservative and stuck to rituals than project risk management, because we have an objective. We still want to complete the project on time. Enterprise risk managers only want to see that their spreadsheets are filled and everything is in line. So it's difficult to talk to them. But what thing is that we need to demonstrate. We need to demonstrate the language of uncertainty on the tools to people who are most interested in the result, not in who like a process. It's about people who want a result. They're sponsor. I didn't explain to you anything that requires mathematician or a physicist to understand. All of that is simple human language. You can explain it in half an hour. The thing is, we need to show that certain things require more tools, and the resilience is probably easiest to explain these days when resilience on everybody's tongue. And many things that we talk about are essentially about reducing overall risk of the project. A big traffic light saying it's red, yellow, or green, and you can do that in many ways, but just don't be dogmatic about one single approach. And not being dogmatic means look what into things that will work. And I think stakeholders, unless they want to teach you how to do the project risk management, and that happens, they will be on board to get risks as that traffic light green as possible. You can use any tool, but you have to explain what is it, what are you doing with it.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Very impressive. Also, the wide range of information around.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Arturas. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. It was really a fruitful session. Lots of information shared, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
The feeling is
very
mutual.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well done, Tufik. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
So you stopped the video?
Let me stop it.